Alright, mate. Let me ask you something. If you had to guess, how long do you think it actually takes the average Aussie to become a millionaire? 10 years? 20? Go on. Take a guess, because most people guess way too high. And that, right there, is the whole problem. The timeline you've got stuck in your head, that's probably the exact thing keeping you poor. So today, I want to walk you through what building wealth in Australia actually looks like in 2026. The real numbers, the real timeframes, and the handful of decisions that separate the people who get there from the people who spend their whole life feeling like they're one paycheck behind. And look, this isn't going to be some fluffy believe in yourself video, alright? I'm pulling straight from ATO data, super fund performance figures, property market numbers, the real stuff. So by the end of this, you'll actually know what the path looks like, instead of just hoping you stumble onto it. Let's start with the boring truth, yeah? Because everyone skips this part. Most Australian millionaires did not get there through some genius side hustle or a lucky crypto trade. Nah, they got there by owning appreciating assets for a long time and just not touching them. That's it. That's the whole secret. And it's so unsexy that most people ignore it completely and go looking for a shortcut instead. Which, ironically, is exactly why the shortcut chasers usually end up further behind than the quiet ones who just bought index funds and forgot about them. Now here's where it gets interesting, mate. A lot of people assume you need a massive income to build real wealth, and that's just not true. Someone earning 90 grand a year, who saves and invests 20% of it consistently for 25 years, will, in almost every case, end up wealthier than someone earning 200,000 who saves nothing. Why? Lifestyle creep. It eats high incomes alive. The 200k earner upgrades the car, upgrades the apartment, upgrades the holidays, and at 50, they've got a great Instagram and basically no net worth. So if you're sitting there on a totally average salary thinking wealth isn't for you, mate, that assumption is wrong. It's actually the most common wrong assumption in personal finance. So let's get into the actual levers, because there's really only 3 that matter. And once you get these, you'll start seeing wealthy people's decisions completely differently. First one, superannuation. Most people treat it like background noise, some random deduction on their payslip they never think twice about. But super, compounding tax effectively over 40 years, that is genuinely one of the most powerful wealth tools any Australian has access to. And the difference between someone who actually checks their fund's performance and consolidates their accounts versus someone who lets 3 lost accounts sit in cash for a decade, that's easily a few hundred grand by retirement. It sounds boring because it is boring, but boring, mate, is what makes people rich. Second lever, property. And this is the one everyone obsesses over, but almost nobody talks about it properly. Owning your own home isn't really an investment in the traditional sense. It's forced savings with a roof attached. Instead of paying off your landlord's mortgage, you're paying off your own. The real acceleration happens when people either use the equity they've built to invest in a second property, or simply hold on to that first home long enough for the market to do the heavy lifting, which, historically, it has, decade after decade, even through the dips that make headlines. The catch? Most people try to buy their dream home first, instead of buying whatever gets them into the market first. And that one decision, dream home versus entry point, is responsible for more delayed wealth than almost anything else out there. Third lever, and this is the big one. This is what actually separates the top from everyone else. Owning a piece of a business, whether that's shares in the stock market or an actual business you run yourself. This is where the top 1% quietly split off from the top 10%, because salary earners, even high-income ones, specialist doctors, senior lawyers, they're still trading hours for dollars, and that has a ceiling. Business owners and investors are trading capital and risk for returns that don't need them to personally show up every single hour to earn them. That's not some hustle culture cliche, mate. It's just math. And it's exactly why so many of the wealthiest Australians you'd walk straight past on the street own a stake in something, rather than just holding a job title. Now here's where it gets genuinely counterintuitive. You'd think the fastest way to wealth is to just maximize your income, chase the promotion, chase the higher paying job, and sure, that helps, but it's actually not the biggest variable. The biggest variable is time in the market, plain and simple. Someone who starts investing modestly at 25 and someone who starts investing aggressively at 35 will often end up in a shockingly similar position by 60, because that 10-year head start on compounding is worth more than almost any raise you'll ever get. Which means the most expensive financial mistake in this country isn't a bad investment, it's waiting. And this is where the psychology comes in, right? Because if all of this is true, and honestly, none of it's a secret, why doesn't everyone just do it? Well, the answer is that building wealth is boring and invisible for a very long time before it becomes obvious, and we're wired to chase things that feel good right now. Buying the new car feels good today. Automating $200 a week into an index fund feels like nothing at all, for years, until suddenly, it isn't nothing anymore. Most people quit the boring path right before it starts paying off, not because the plan failed, but because nothing visible happened for long enough that they just lost faith in it. So, mate, if there's one thing to take away from this, becoming rich in Australia isn't about finding some hidden opportunity nobody else knows about. It's about picking the unglamorous, repeatable moves, super, home ownership done sensibly, some form of business or market ownership, and then just refusing to stop doing them when they feel boring, which they will, for a long time. The people who look like they got rich overnight, they almost never did. They just started early enough that you only noticed them once the results became impossible to ignore. So if this shifted how you think about your own numbers even a little bit, hit subscribe Aussie Wealth, yeah? Because next day, I'm breaking down exactly how much you need invested at every age to retire comfortably in Australia, and the number might surprise you either way. Catch you in the next one, mate.